Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for April's ECLI webinar. If you aren't familiar with ECLI, we are the Early Career Librarians Initiative associated with the South Central chapter of the Medical Library Association, or MLA. My name is Sandra Desjardins, and I co-chair ECLI with my colleague, Laura Haygood. We partnered with NNLM Region 3 to launch this webinar series on topics that are useful to LIS students and early career librarians. Our next session will be on July 26th, so please check our webpage for more information. Today, we are pleased to welcome this month's speakers, Brenda Linares and Lindsay Blake. To begin, Brenda is currently the Associate Dean of Library Services at UMKC Libraries at University, Missouri, Kansas City. She also has a Master of Library and Information Science from the University of California, Los Angeles, and a Master of Business Administration from North Carolina State University. She is a member of the Academy of Health Information Professionals, and she loves working and building relationships with students, faculty, researchers, and community. Currently, she serves on the MLA Board of Directors, and in addition to this role, she serves as the liaison to the Journal of the Medical Library Association, or JMLA editorial board, and she's a member of the JMLA Equity Work Group. Brenda has served in a variety of capacities for the MLA, including serving as a member of the Continuing Education Committee and the JMLA editorial board. She is a current member of the Mid-Continental chapter of MLA and also a member of the South Central chapter of the MLA, where she currently serves as a member of the DEI task force. Brenda also received several grants from the NNLM to collaborate and work on outreach projects to promote patient and consumer health and education resources. In 2022, she was the recipient of the NNLM Emerging Leader Award. Her interests include outreach, consumer health, instruction and technology, health literacy, patient education and evidence-based research, mentoring, DEI, and leadership and management. Our second guest today is Lindsay Blake. She is the Clinical Services Coordinator for the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. She has worked as a librarian for 17 years, starting as an information services librarian and a liaison to the College of Nursing, and then moving into a clinical librarian position in Augusta, Georgia. She moved to Arkansas in 2016 to establish a clinical librarian program at UAMS. Lindsay has a Bachelor of Science in Education with an emphasis in science from the University of Kansas, a Master of Library and Information Science from the University of South Carolina, and she is currently working on an educational doctorate in higher education administration from Arkansas State University. Lindsay is a distinguished member of the Academy of Health Information Professionals, and she is actively involved in both regional and national library associations. In today's webinar, our speakers will give a presentation on how to set professional goals and successfully achieve them. Thank you for being our guests today, ladies. I will turn everything over to you both.
All right, thank you, Sandra. I'm just going to share my screen. Make sure I have this set up correctly. All right. So I know we have a repeat in slides here, but here is myself and Brenda. And just to review our learning objectives, these are what we received that the ECLI would like us to review, and we kept them as is, but added our own twist to them. So we will talk today about setting goals and working towards meeting them, about building a professional network to support those goals, developing skills to meet your goals, and applying for grants and other funding. And while we do this, we're going to talk a little bit in between about our experiences.
And so here's the agenda for today. Like we said, we're going to be telling you our journey and our stories because we both have different paths, so you can see which path we took and why a bit, and then how important it is to set goals and working towards meeting them, because I know that early on you're really not sure what you want to do, but thinking about that early on will help you as you decide what's your long-term goal in the profession. And it's important to build that network of collaborators, mentors. So we'll share a story and how we that has helped us in our path, and how to develop that, and how important professional development is in your career in terms of joining organizations and working on projects and collaborating with colleagues. And something that we've been very fortunate of, and you have resources and available for you, is applying for grants and other funding that NNLM has that can help you grow professionally, and also help with your libraries and different projects that you might have with people that you want to work, or community organizations or other collaborators. And we'll give you some of those specific examples of projects that we both have worked on and the grants that we received and the impact that we had in the community, just so you can see that there's different types of projects that you can work with. And then we'll open that up for any questions and discussions that you might have. So to start with, here's me, a little bit of my background. I grew up in California, so as you can see, my background is in finance. And so a lot of people tend to be intimidated about going into health sciences librarianship because they think that they have to have that experience and that background. And mine was in finance. I thought I was going to go into business. And it wasn't until I met my mentor, who was my boss when I was working on an undergraduate library, that she said, "Hey, you were good working on the front desk. You should think about going to library school." And I think it was meant to be, because that was in the summer. In the fall, I studied for the GRE. I, took it. In December, I applied. And then in the spring, I got into UCLA Library School program, and I was fortunate to get the ALS Spectrum Scholarship, which paid for my library degree. So I was fortunate to do that. And I tell people that it wasn't until my last semester of library school that I decided to be a health sciences librarian, because I interned in one, and I realized I could do this. I like helping people. I can have an impact. I don't have to have an MD, and so I definitely pursue that path. And I was fortunate that as I did that, I knew that I always wanted to be a manager, a leader, and supervise people. And so I was fortunate to get into the National Library of Medicine Associate Fellow. So if you're early in your career right now, explore that. If you're interested in doing that, it's a great training program. I was able to be in Bethesda, Maryland for a year. So I was there at the NIH campus, and hey, I learned from the people that were creating PubMed, Medline Plus. So I really enjoy that experience. And so I definitely, that's my background in terms of that. And as you can see, I have experiences in different libraries: academic, law, graduate, the health sciences, undergraduate, because in library school, I just wanted to get that exposure. And because I wanted to go into management and leadership, I decided to pursue a master's in business administration, because a lot of the times, as I was learning and working with different people, I realized that you deal with a lot of people management, business questions. You have to know about how to understand a budget, how to make those decisions, and you learn some of that in the MBA program. So I'm really fortunate that I was able to do that. As I was working full time, I did my MBA in the professional program at nighttime. So that's one of the things that I can tell you about my background. And then here's my experience. And I bring this up that in terms of you setting goals, as you can see, I have worked in different institutions in different states. So I've been a health sciences librarian for the last 15, 16 years. And as you can see, I've been in different states. So I worked at the University of Miami in Florida, where I was there, the head of outreach, and also their financial manager, because I had my background in business. So I got to work directly with the director there when it came to working on the budget, but also with outreach. And sometimes as you're thinking about your path in your career, you have to think about, are you going to stay in one place, or are you going to move up? Because sometimes some opportunities might not be in the library that you are at. And so you might have to move to different locations or states if that's something that you can do, or depending on your family, or things that you have to think about. So as you can see, I was in Miami. Then I was in UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina. And then I was at KU Med here in Kansas City, Kansas. And I think all of those different experiences prepare me to what I'm doing right now, and as Associate Dean of Library Services here at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I supervise 8 people, and that includes the circulation staff, the teaching and learning, and also the health sciences library. And thinking about your path, think about what you want to do. And I always tell, as you can see, I also have been an adjunct instructor for Emporia State University and also the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And one of the things that I tell students is, you might have your first job. It might not be the dream or the best job that you wanted to, but you know what? Take it, because that's going to give you the experience and the skills you need to get that second job that is going to potentially be your dream job, and you just build on that. And so know that any experience you get from any library, any type of projects or programs you attend or are part of, are giving you experiences that will help you with the skills you need for that next job that you're looking for. So as you can see, depending on your pathway, you might definitely have to explore the opportunities of potentially moving out of state, moving to other parts of the country. And so that's something that you have to think about as you think about your goals, short-term and long-term, and what you want to do with the profession.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey as well. There's some similarities with Brenda's and some differences. So I came to librarianship as a second career. I graduated with my education degree, and I taught for 3 years middle school science. And while middle schoolers are fascinating people and a drama all unto themselves, I got overloaded when they started having me teach both high school and middle school. Apparently, I don't like high schoolers as much. And the librarian at my school convinced me I should go back and get a library degree. So I did. I went to South Carolina and graduated with my library degree in 2006. And when I went to library school, I was fully going expecting to be a school librarian. But with my background in science, my advisor said, you really need to go into special libraries, and kind of showed me the door. And so I got a new advisor, and honestly, I landed in medical libraries specifically because Augusta hired me first. I interviewed my last semester of college with a few different librarians, and they're the one that came back. As you can see, I was hired as an information services librarian. What I really was like this emerging technologies librarian at the time. Now, keep in mind, this was like 17 years ago, so I can't do that job anymore. But this was like when we were starting to get tutorials online and everything. So I was on the cutting edge then. And I also started working as a nursing liaison, moved into allied health as well, and I got very involved in those areas. Now, I can tell you my experience in my first job was not great. They had fired the supervisor who hired me, or he left precipitously, let's say. And so the woman who took his place had just been promoted to that, and she was really busy trying to figure out what her job was, let alone helping me figure out what my job was. So I didn't really have that supervisory mentoring that a lot of people found. So I floundered for a little while until we hired a new education librarian for her old position. Sandra Bandy, she came from Florida, and she taught me all about conferences, all about mentoring and meeting people and networking, and about the little pieces of my job. And she really helped to guide me through a lot of those first years, and I learned a lot. Now I've also worked under a lot of different directors. I don't know, this is a thing that follows me. But we were under an interim director, and we needed a new clinical librarian. I applied for the position, and he gave it to me, but he wanted me to do both the jobs because we didn't have somebody for the nursing position, which of course is very important. So it wasn't until we hired a full-time director that I got to move into that clinical position full-time. Now, had I known I was going to be doing 2 jobs at once, I probably would not have volunteered for that. And I suggest none of you ever do that. Doing more than your job is hard enough when somebody leaves and you're just taking on pieces of it. But doing 2 positions made it so that I wasn't really doing either of them terribly well, which was really frustrating for me, and I think probably for everybody I was working with as well. Now, when I moved into the full clinical position, that worked out great. I expanded that. I did really well. And as Brenda said, sometimes to move up the ladder, you need to go somewhere else. And I wasn't going to be able to really do much more where I was in Georgia. So when the opportunity came from the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences to start a new clinical program and theoretically expand that later on, I had a family already, but my kids were pretty young. My oldest was just starting grade school. So we thought this is a good time to move now and get this out of the way. And then we're just going to stay wherever that is so they can grow up somewhere. And that's what we've been doing. So we moved to Arkansas. I established a new program here. We did expand it a couple of years ago. So I have one additional clinical librarian. So I've kind of accidentally moved into management in that way. And a couple of things I want to bring across with my experience here is Brenda and I have done a lot of the same things in totally different ways. I did the Emerging Leaders Program as well. She's involved in it this year. I did it in 2019 to 2020. That trip to the library in Galveston for my to shadow my director was the last trip I took before COVID, and then I've been here pretty much ever since. And I am also interested in management, so that is why instead of the MBA, I'm working on a doctorate in higher education to go about it that way. So some of the similar goals, but I also really love what I do in the clinical. I have enjoyed it, and I am not in a hurry to move out of it. I like the idea of expanding my career and moving up if the right opportunity comes along, but I also really enjoy what I do now. So I'm not in a hurry. Now I think Brenda was lucky because her opportunity came up right near where she was already. So I think that worked out great for her. And if something comes up like that for me, that's great. But I'm also very happy here. So that's kind of my quick story. I think we wanted to move into setting goals and working towards medium. So this is the one area that Brenda and I want to talk a little bit about, not only what we do personally, but we kind of wanted to look, there's a lot of literature out there, and we want to provide you with some actual concrete things as well. So I know they're going to be putting some of these links in the chat for you, kind of where I pulled this information. You can literally Google this anywhere, however. And what we wanted to talk with was talking about SMART goals. And you've probably heard about these all over the place. We use this in our interprofessional education here at UAMS. So I hear about this, I think, every day. But these really, really are helpful in giving you really clear direction on where you're going with your career and with your job. So as you can see, it gives direction, it gives you motivation, it gives you purpose, it gives you control. And just going through each of these, you want to start with a goal that is specific. So you want to publish a paper. You want to serve on a certain committee. You want to be promoted to assistant professor. Whatever that goal may be, that you have a very clear idea in your head what it is. And that's the important thing to start with. The next one is being measurable. So on those examples I gave you, it's pretty easy to measure. You either publish or you don't. You either achieve the assistant professor or you don't. Some things like that. Some goals are going to be a little bit more gray, right? Like you want to do a percentage of something over a certain amount of time. So keep in mind just a way you can measure that goal. How is it going to happen? The next one is being attainable. So make sure you can achieve those goals that you're setting. So if I say I'm going to attain assistant professor in 2 years, but the guidelines for my university clearly say I have to have 3 years of experience first, that's not obtainable. So I need to keep in mind some of the outside forces that are working on this. And a lot of times when we're thinking about goals related to our careers, these are things we're going to be doing beyond our daily jobs, right? So we want to think about like our daily work that we do every day for everyone, searching the literature, answering reference questions, teaching classes, all those things. But then we have these things like working on committees and publications and doing scholarship. And those are kind of where our goals are more than anything. And we want to make sure that when we're thinking about those, we are making sure that we're giving ourselves enough time to attain those goals. Because of course, every day can be really busy, or some days it's a little slower, right? So we have to work in those goals as well. So think about being relevant. So how is this relevant to your career, to your education? Brenda and I talked a little bit. She wanted to get her MBA, so because she was interested in management. I'm doing the same thing with a different path. So thinking about how those things are relevant for us personally, but for our careers as well. And along with relevance, we're going to talk about this a little bit on the side, but you can see not only how this helps your career, but how it helps your library or your institution. So a lot of times we may be required to have goals that integrate with a vision that the library has or a vision that an institution has. And if that is the case, a lot of times our goals, if we are doing something where we publish, we're going to publish under our name, but we're going to publish under our institution, under our library name. And that is something that brings about a claim to not only ourselves and our career, but it also helps our library and institution. So think about those things you're doing and how it will reflect on your institution and on your library and how it helps your institution as well. And then the time-based one, we kind of already talked about this. This goes with obtainable, I think, a little bit, in that you set a deadline. So if we're talking about promotion, you're looking, or publication, you're looking at, well, I need to do a project first, or I need to have a topic. So I'm going to give myself a year to work on a project and build this up and get something that I can present. Next, I'm going to work on, giving myself this much time to write it up. And I'm going to break that down even further into, here are the individual pieces I'm going to write by such and such a time. So give yourself that timeline, give yourself a deadline. Now on this one, I'm going to say also give yourself a little grace and a little flexibility. Again, you've got your everyday job. You may have the best intentions in the world because, hey, it's finals week. Nobody needs you this week. They're done. We're going into summer. And then all of a sudden, all the summer students come flooding in next week. And you're like, where did you people come from? So, you might not get as much done as you want. So make sure that when you develop this plan, you have a little grace, a little flexibility. I think we're talking about that on the next slide here too. But so thinking about potential obstacles and potential assistance. All right. So you never need to achieve any of these things by yourself. Okay, well, maybe the education you do pretty much have to achieve by yourself. Okay, if you're going to do your MBA or EDD, you got to do that on your own, maybe with family help. But if you're at work and you're publishing, you're working on promotion, you're working on getting committees, this all involves other people working together. And so think about who you can work with that will help you to achieve those goals. Who's going to be able to provide assistance or advice? And also think about the obstacles. So again, if you want to publish an article, well, what's going to get in your way? If it's not accepted at the first journal you tried, you might need to try another journal. So you'll want to have backups. If your project doesn't work out the way you plan, well, what are you going to do? Well, maybe you think instead of publishing it in JMLA, you go to hypothesis and say, hey, this was a failure. I want other people to know about it so that they can see what happens. So think for those alternatives. Write your information down, keep it handy. You can't see behind me, but I have this big whiteboard back here, and I've got my goals, I've got timelines, I've got things written down on it that have steps and everything, that I break down and I change as I need to. And that one's on the bottom to reflect and readjust on a periodic basis. But really, I come in weekly and I adjust what I need to do based on what's going on that week. So if I plan to have my summary written this week, but I look at my calendar and I barely have time to, grab some chips for lunch, I'm going to probably say, you know what, we're going to change that deadline to next week. So just keep that in mind. Now, the other thing in there is to make sure you hold yourself accountable. Don't be sitting in your office thinking, oh, I could work on it, but I could just do it next week. We all have those moments, right? But sometimes you need to think, no, if I really want to progress my career, I need to think about what I want to do. So sometimes you're like, well, I don't want to work on this part, even though I said I'd get done this week, but maybe I'm more interested in working on the second part. So maybe you just kind of switch up what you're going to do that week. And the last thing we want to keep in mind is keep your perspective. Have that life-work balance. I'm where I am now partially because of my family. I didn't want to make any big jumps after I moved here. We did this one, and so if something comes up, like I said, in this area, that's great. But my kids are in junior high and upper elementary school now, and so they're not, if I move them now, they're very entrenched in their friend groups and their activities and things, and that would be a lot harder on my whole family. So I'm not as interested in that right now. But if something came up in this area, that would be great. Now, I can tell you also, because of my family, when you have small children, sometimes when you have animals, they may take up a lot of time. And that's your choice to make, and you've decided on it, and it's fine. You might be doing great. But I might not have the same capacity as somebody who decided not to have children, or who's still single, whichever it may be, to pursue my degree. not until my children got a little older and they're fully into teen and preteen ages now. And they come home and they go to their rooms. So they don't care if I'm studying when I get home. They don't want to play games with me right now most of the time. So I have a little more freedom, but I've had to balance that with what I'm doing at work. And keep that in mind, because that life balance is really important for you all, because without that, you can't bring your best to your work as well.
And I think it's important, adding on to what Lindsay was saying, as you start your first job, your second job, know what you want to get out of it, because it's always, you get what you put into it. Early on, if you notice that this is a job that you like and you want to put into it, then work hard, get all that experience and exposure. But if you're feeling, what, I don't think this was the right job for me. And sometimes you go to the interview, you think it's the right match and you like the people, but then you go into the place itself and you realize, oh gosh, this was completely different than what I expected when I interview. It's okay to also review that and say, what, my expectations were different and here I am. And then definitely, if you learn that early on, you can then have the time to be able to change and adapt that to something else. Or like Lindsay say, hey, or we've done, maybe it's time for me to look elsewhere. And as you do that though, learn the skills that you need for that next position then, because then you're saying, okay, what, I don't want to be here that long. So maybe let me see, as I'm here, what's my next position that I want to go up and apply for. Start looking potentially for those job descriptions and those positions that are coming up through the listservs, because that way you can have an idea of what skills those positions want. And do you have some of them? If you don't, maybe you might start thinking of taking more CE classes or attending more webinars, and take advantage, as we're going to talk later on, about being part of the different organizations that offer you some of those resources and trainings that you need for that next job or for that next promotion. And as you're thinking of going back to the previous slide with the SMART goal setting, hopefully you have a good supervisor that you can talk to and find out from them more about, what's the strategic plan for the library, for the university, how are they matching what I want to do professionally, and use that resource, because your supervisor should be there to guide you in that process, as you know what you want to accomplish, but they also know what they want to accomplish for the department. So definitely have those conversations with them as you're building those goals and those skills that you want to grow into. If it's possible, seek a mentor. It could be someone within your library, someone within the organization that you're part of, someone that you can look up to and bounce ideas with, and they could provide advice based on their experience and what they've gone through. I'm very fortunate throughout my journey. I've had different people in different stages that I can reach out to and say, hey, I'm thinking about applying for this job. What do you think? Do you know anything about this institution? The skills that I have right now, here's my CV. They can provide feedback on that, so that you can basically say, if my goal is to go to that next position, maybe you need to work on your CV. So that's something that they can help you with. So definitely seek out that mentoring, that collaboration, or people that can help you that have been through the process itself, or learn from what they said. Oh, I wish I knew this before. Now you can learn, and then don't make the same mistakes. And in terms of the goals and being attainable and be accountable for it, and make sure that you can accomplish them, review those goals. You might have the goals for your performance evaluation that happens every year with your supervisor, but you might have your own personal goals, how many CE classes you want to take, which webinar you want to attend. Do you want to have, that certification for consumer health training and MLA, or the systematic review? What do you need to accomplish that? Is that going to be happening in the next 6 months? Lindsay say sometimes things happen and you might have to readjust those deadlines that you have. And so keep that in mind, that it's okay to change that. And that's why you want to reevaluate those goals and what you want to accomplish, because you might have something that you wanted to do in 2 years. Well, things happen. Something happened personally or at work. Your supervisor left, or the director of the library left. And so now you're changing the priorities of that institution. So your goals need to change, but always definitely keeping in mind the priorities of that institution, but also your own priorities, because you want to definitely focus on yourself and what you want to do with yourself. One of the things that I remember doing when I was working towards my my MBA was I had a little box where I put some of my goals or wishes. And so one of them was, I want to get my MBA. And it was right there. And so once in a while, I'll be like, oh, I did this a year ago. Let me see some of the goals and things that I want to accomplish within the next 5 years. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do that. I'm almost there, hang in there. You're taking one more class to go. So definitely as you're thinking about your goals, I think something that being accountable for, also, cheer those successes as you're moving towards those goals, because you have this big goal that you want to accomplish, but you know what? It takes a step. It's a process to get there. So you know what? Celebrate those small steps, that small accomplishment, because that's going to motivate you to say, hey, if I could do step 1, I'm ready for step 2. And sometimes, you know what? Also, maybe there's something that happened and you can't go step 3. Hey, I still accomplished step 2. It's going to take me longer for that step 3, but I can do this. So definitely be your own cheerleader. And it helps to have that support, either a mentor or someone at work, or if you have family and friends, colleagues, they're your cheerleaders. They're rooting for you because they want you to succeed and be happy. So definitely keep that in mind as you're thinking about dreaming big, but also, hey, it takes small steps to get there. And it's okay if there's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The thing is how to deal with that step back, and don't let that get in the way, because there are going to be obstacles and you just have to keep going because things are coming your way. And so definitely keep that in mind to do that.
Okay, so we want to move on to our second goal today, which is building a professional network to support your goals. And this is about finding collaborators. So one of the best places to find collaborators and networking is, of course, at your professional conferences. So, of course, there's MLA, for those of you who can go there, but really I find the best networking is at the regional or even state conferences, just because they're so much smaller and so much personable. As Brenda said, she's part of the Mid-Continental. I'm part of South Central. She is as well. I was also part of the Southern chapter of MLA for a long time. So those chapter meetings, they tend to be smaller. They're more affordable to attend. And even though I know we have a lot of these wonderful webinars online and can do a lot of hybrid things these days, I have to say, for networking and for meeting collaborators, there's nothing that can beat being in person. And this is true with just finding mentors, meeting people, going to all these areas. I will say that I found a number of informal mentors, of collaborators, of just people to talk to at conferences. And it's just because you stop and you check out their poster, you ask them questions after a presentation, whatever it may be, or you just strike up a conversation when you're standing in line waiting for the buffet. Whatever it is, you realize, oh, hey, we're both working on this thing, or we're both interested in this thing, and you get to talking about it. And if it's somebody with more experience, you're like, hey, can I call you about this? Or, hey, can I work on your project? And if it's somebody with less experience, you say, hey, maybe we should work together and see what we can come up with. And it really is just so easy to do because it's such a small group and everybody is pretty close. So we just want you to keep in mind that those associations, working in committees, working in, within caucuses and chapters and doing all those things, working through the early career librarian initiative and meeting new people there. These are great places where you can make those connections.
And adding to that, I mentioned mentors are really important, and they don't have to be, you can have informal mentors that you chat with and you just happen to meet them in a conference and you find that there's a lot of connections with them. But there's also that formal mentorship program. I know MLA has MLA Connect. A lot of chapters have that. I definitely, like we say, take advantage of that, because we like to tell you what we went through or what we learned, or we want you to succeed what you are. So reach out and find someone that has something in common with you. Definitely, like Lindsay say, going to the in-person conferences is great because you can meet someone randomly and start a conversation and realize you're from the same area, you grew up from the same area. And one of the ways to find people like that, or your interest, is the MLA caucuses. You have depending on the job that you're doing or the community you want to be part of, you find colleagues with similar interests. And one of the things that I found out from that is that as you get talking to what you do in your library, what they're doing in their libraries, or you go to these conferences where you start hearing what people are doing in the libraries, you tend to find people that have common interests, and they can be potential collaborators. That's how I've written book chapters and articles, because I find colleagues that just happen to have the similar interest, and there's a call for a book chapter, there's a call for a journal article, and we just reach each other and say, hey, we were talking about this last MLA, you want to write a chapter together? And so again, going back to your goals, if your goal is publishing, and if your library wants you to do more research, if you're in a place that you have tenure or it's part of the different levels of librarianship, publishing is important. So now you have found a colleague to publish with and is your friend, and you're working together on a project, and then you can have this published item and then also present in conferences. So that's another way of definitely using the professional organizations as a way of benefiting you, but also meeting other people. And then those organizations provide you with a lot of leadership opportunities. A lot of the times you go to the meetings and then you realize, oh, we need someone to lead this project, or we're thinking about doing a task force, or you know what, we need a treasurer, or you know what, we need a secretary who can take minutes. Well, you know what, it's a secretary role, but you're taking minutes and you're finding out what the organization is doing, who's doing what. That's a good way to get your foot in the door when it comes to leadership opportunities, because it could be a secretary. So now you know what's going on with the organization. Well, now you might be interested in, being the chair of that, or the treasurer. So being in organizations definitely helps you, network with other people, learn what other institutions are doing too. So you can say, hey, maybe I can try this in my institution, and we can do something similar in my library. Maybe not the same thing, but I can apply whatever they learn and apply it in my library. So definitely take advantage. I've had some of my great friends I've met through MLA, and I look forward to seeing them each year, or even the chapter meetings, because we build those relationships. And I would hear from someone and say, hey, Brenda, you were mentioned because, Mary told me about you, and we want to come and present to our group, or we want to collaborate on a project. And so though, you definitely keep in mind that those things definitely, if you talk to people and have those relationships, you definitely get potential projects to work on in the future that are just not just beneficial to you as a professional, but also to the profession itself. And you get to work with colleagues and build up friendships and relationships. So I'm really glad that I look forward to seeing everyone when I go to the chapter meetings and the annual meeting, because I have built those relationships with everyone. So take advantage of that for sure, and do that either virtually or in person if you can, and seek out and see what type of professional development support your institution has, because that also helps you prioritize what you want to do. And so here's me just telling you a little bit about my involvement. I've been very fortunate that I've been part of, because of my moves, 3 different chapters. I was part of MAC, the Mid-Atlantic chapter, South Central chapter, Southern chapter. So I met a lot of people through the different places that I worked at. And my involvement has just grown because I met people. I was interested in different projects. I wanted to grow personally. I told you that I wanted to already go into management early on and work with different people. So, I was really involved in the different caucuses, the leadership and management caucus too. And I was also involved in juries and grants that just to select the people that win those awards. So through all of that, I definitely have met a lot of great people that have become my colleagues, my friends. Some of them my mentors. I'll reach out to someone and just text them and say, hey, you got a minute? I'm applying for this job. Or I've actually called people when I'm trying to decide about accepting my position and be like, hey, this is the pros and cons. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And they've been good, someone to bounce ideas with. So know that you can definitely create long-term friendships in that sense. Think about it also, your local organizations. A lot of states have their own state library association. So maybe that's something to get involved in and know what's happening locally in your state. So I definitely think that I have benefited greatly from being part of different organizations. And so I definitely promote that a lot because I've been able to present in those conferences. I've been able to meet friends and colleagues. I've been able to somehow talk to someone, and we, like I mentioned earlier, wrote a book chapter together. And so it's a good way to network with people and also have fun. So we talk about this stuff about, the professional, but also in some of those conferences, you also have fun. And so it's a way to socialize and enjoy the time that for the professional aspect of it, but also for the fun aspect of it, depending on the place where that conference takes place. And I think one of the things, because of the medical librarianship being a very, smaller community, you get to know a lot of people. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you talk to someone and it's a good thing, everybody would know. But it's also, if a bad thing, the bad reputation would go your way. So definitely know that, keep that in mind when you're networking with people and meeting someone, that it's a small niche of group of people. So we all know each other. We talk to different people in different states and different libraries. So that's how you know about someone else, what's happening in, in California to what happens in the East Coast. But they definitely, if you are a good leader, if you, are a good collaborator, a great librarian, your own colleagues nominate you for awards. Your own colleagues want you to take a leadership role in one of the committees. And I always say I'm very fortunate that this year, my colleagues and friends have entrusted me to be the MLA president-elect. So it's something that I'm really humbly accepting and very fortunate to be that. And I'm definitely need to be, be able to represent their voices. So you'll see that people, if they see that leadership in you, they'll definitely seek out for you to participate. And so keep that in mind when you're participating in the different organizations.
All right, I think I went too far. Let me make it go back. There we go. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I think one of the things that we kind of skipped over on this one, when we're talking about that it is just volunteering. Volunteer your regional, volunteer an MLA, because we always need people, and there's always room, right? And not only volunteer, but when you're on a committee, do things. You start every time you're on a committee, just say, when the chair says, hey, we need XYZ done, just volunteer to do part of that stuff. Whenever you have time, because that's how you build that reputation of, hey, I know that person, they were really helpful on my committee, I'd love to have them on this committee. Or, hey, that person was really helpful here, I want them to come be the chair of this committee when I rotate off next year. So keep that in mind. People know who is great to have on a committee and really helpful, and people who just came on the committee and put it on their resume. And the ones that are really helpful will get invited back again and again. And as Brenda said, they're going to be the ones that are going to be pointed out for leadership things. They're going to be the ones pointed out for awards. So those are the people that we're going to see. Now, that being said, we realize that you don't always have the time to volunteer for everything. So don't feel like you have to, but when you can, reach out and help. So I pulled these because I'm terrible at taking pictures. Brenda seems to have a million pictures, but these are all from the same conference in 2017 at MLA. And I brought this out to show you kind of how changes happen and how this has moved me forward. So over here is a group of librarians from Oklahoma, from my new South Central chapter that I had just moved to that year. A few months before, these are librarians from my other library that I had just left. Only one of them is actually still there, and my mentor isn't even in here. My friend Kim has moved to Canada, so now I have international connections to collaborate with, which we have worked on projects, and still in Georgia, in Kentucky. Again, these are people that I can contact because I worked with them. I know their capabilities. We work on projects. If I have questions in their areas, we still connect a lot. And then when we go and see, as you can see, we went out and we had lunch at the Pike's Place Market. Now that year, Brenda is really cool. She gets to be the president-elect of MLA. So that is awesome. And I am a little scared. But my thing was that this year I was also the chair-elect of Southern Chapter. So I went through the regional conference, which gives you really good leadership experience. You have a lot of support doing it, but it is a lot of work. So not something I'd approach lightly. But keep in mind, as Brenda said, if there's a secretary or treasurer position, that's something that doesn't require a ton of expertise, but you're on that leadership panel. If you're a chair of a committee, you're on that leadership panel for that organization, and you learn a lot about how the organization works, and you learn how things, a lot about leadership and management, just doing those things and being involved. So it's a great place to be. And then if you want to undertake being the chair of a committee, being the chair of a chapter or president, depending on where you are, or undertaking on the board of directors or president of MLA like Brenda has, those are things that you can work towards. Now this year, again, I did this a lot. I volunteered for committees. I made sure I participated, and then I was chair of a lot of those committees going through. So this particular year, I was the chair of the Lighter Lecture Committee for MLA. I'd been a member a couple of years previously, and I tried to help as much as possible. And so the following year I was chair. And this was a real coup because I got our brand new NLM director to come and speak at the MLA meeting. So there's me with Patty Brennan, and I got to introduce her and everything. So that was kind of one of the highlights of my MLA that year. But that has happened again and again, that I volunteer for committees. I work as a member for a couple of years because I'm helpful, because I'm organized. They're like, hey, you would be good to be the chair of this committee next year. Are you interested? Now, I might not be the only one doing this, so I'm not always going to be chair because a lot of you are going to be working and be helpful. And so keep in mind, but doing that thing and moving things forward will keep you in the running.
And as you know, we keep mentioning you might want some skills that you want to learn or training that you want to take. Take advantage of that with the different organizations that you can be part of, because there's different ones in different regions, state, even local. You might find some local organizations that you can participate in and be part of and create that network that would build those relationships and potential collaborators. Seek out, there's a lot of resources. As you can see, here's one of the webinars that we're doing right now with the network of the National Library of Medicine. And they have a lot of free trainings that you can do. Take advantage of that and see, because they're always flexible and they can fit your schedule. So take advantage of that. Or if you want to learn about what somebody's doing in their library, or you know what, you're doing one thing now, but you potentially want to learn more about systematic reviews or community engagement. Seek out those people that you meet at MLA or in the different caucuses and call them. They love to talk to you about what they do. And maybe you want to do something similar in your institution. And of course, I keep saying this from my previous slides, you find ways of collaborating in projects. You see a lot of the presentations or publications that happen, and you get the surveys that you can participate and answer questions about maybe librarians working in different states and trying to figure out, hey, well, what's happening during COVID? We want to find out how your library dealt with the situation with working remotely. Now you have like people in different states around the country working on a project together, and everybody's interested in it. And here it is, it's presented, it's published. So that way you get that. There's the MLA RTI that you can go in and have and learn about the research process. Sometimes, depending on what your background is, you might not have had exposure to doing original research, collecting data, evaluating that data. There's ways of learning that, and one of them could be maybe learning more about the MLA RTI, or even taking some webinars and classes that the different chapters or MLA offers for you to learn how the process works and what role can you play, or what training do you need, or even those classes can train you to do those things in your library. And take advantage of potentially CEs, like we mentioned before, some of them, and there's probably another slides moving forward, that you can get a certification depending on how many CEs you take. If you can get a certification through MLA, if you do a lot of community engagement and you want to get the CHIS, I believe, certification to, you can do that through some of the classes that the network of the National Library of Medicine does. There's a disaster preparedness, the systematic review one. So there's different, if your goal is to get any of those certifications that will then help you get the next promotion within your library, or maybe the next job at a different institution, take advantage of those classes being offered either during the conferences, or even a lot of times like caucuses have classes that they offer, or your chapter. So definitely keep that in mind. And some of them are free and some of them you might have to pay for them. So know that if you have to pay for them, look and see if there's maybe money in your institution. Definitely pay attention to when you go into a library and ask questions. What type of professional development do they offer for you to grow and do your job? Because they might tell you, we have $2,000, so we support you going to maybe one conference, but then the rest could be used for a CE that you can pay for, or a training you can go to. There's a long week systematic review training that you want to go to, and that's your goal. Make sure you know that what the resources available in your institution, money wise, or maybe there's other scholarships that you can apply to pay for that. Definitely look into the network that they could potentially have money available for you to go and take a class or take a training that is going to help you personally to grow, but it's also going to benefit your library and the people that you work with and the people that you provide services to. So that's something definitely to keep in mind as you're thinking what your end goal is, or what do you want to see yourself in 5 years. Well, to get there, maybe you need to do a lot of training and learning different skills. There's resources available for you that you can take advantage of as you grow.
And this literally came out this morning, but this is actually copied from the one I got last week when I was making the slides. But some of those things that you can take advantage from the national, the network of the National Library of Medicine are right here. And this is only a short, brief bit, but I will put in a plug, although Brandon will probably do it later, that if you have not already, go to your region. We've got the regions divided up here. Wherever it is you live, find your regional office, sign up with them, get the emails. These are from all over the United States. I mean, the best thing COVID had done for us, it's made education so much easier. We do webinars now, everyone does webinars, and they're all over the place. So whatever expert you need, if they live in California and you're up here in Maine, you got it. So we're putting links in the chat, and there should be one here to this NLM main page. You can find your region, which you can see on the map here. I'm currently in region 3 with Brenda, and I'm over here in Arkansas, and she's up in Kansas. But I came from region 2 and she came from region 1. So we've been kind of all over the place ourselves. But it doesn't matter where you are. These are from everywhere, and you can find almost any topic. And the great thing about these is these are all going to be live, so we can ask questions and do all that. But of course, every single one of these is recorded. So I can go back into their database and I can learn about any of the stuff at any time. I can go through PubMed and other databases. I can learn about visualization. I can learn about systematic. It's all in there. So NNLM is one of the best places to get some of these educational opportunities, but do sign up with your chapters, your caucuses, whatever you're interested in, and keep an eye out on MLA, on the caucus listservs, because those organizations, even the ones that you're not directly related to, we put out a lot of good content. One of the organizations I'm on, one of the caucuses I'm on is AMLA, so the African American Medical Library Group. And they put out a lot of great stuff, especially for me, about education opportunities, microaggressions, different topics that I'm not going to find in another area, but I still need education on. And they do a lot of broad things that are great for everybody. So you don't have to limit yourself to just, your interest, your caucus, because a lot of the caucuses are putting out good information. And now that it's free to join them, you can feel free to take advantage of whatever it is you need. So get on those listservs. And I know sometimes it's a lot of information, but it's well worth it to find some of these opportunities.
And I think I covered some of this early on about professional development, but think about, like somebody mentioned in the chat, some of the times there's money available for you to pay for some of this accreditations or specializations. I know that as I mentioned, I teach at the Emporia State University Library School program, and I teach the consumer health class for the students. And I've had actually librarians take it for that semester or the summer. And our region NNLM basically has paid for those students once they complete the class to get that cheese certification. So they take the class, they finish the class, and then the region basically pays for their certification because there's a fee for it, but because they took it and the region, the NNLM region pays for it, it's free, and now they have the certification as part of their professional development. So definitely learn about all of those resources available. AHIP, I think we haven't spoken a lot about that, but both of us have it. I think it's definitely something for you to pursue if you definitely, staying in the health sciences profession. Many jobs out there, as you're applying for them, they say AHIP preferred. And so I definitely advise you to explore more about that and see about getting it. There's a provisional one, and depending on the many years you've been in librarianship, you can go to the next level. And so definitely, again, take advantage of that. And there's mentors that you can seek out to help you with the process and collecting all that information that you need to submit to MLA. So definitely use the resources available to you. If you're a student and still working on your master's in library science, take advantage of the student fees for the organizations, and because it's cheaper now, because once you graduate and you actually go and be a librarian, it's going to be more expensive. So if you are a student right now, take advantage of the student fee memberships and see and learn more about that, and take advantage, like Lindsay say, about what are other sections or caucuses within those organizations are offering for professional development, and take as much as you can, again making sure it fits into your work and life balance, because you also, going back to the goals, right, making sure they're more specific and they're manageable. And so you don't want to go there and you might, depending on who you are, take a lot of trainings, take a lot of webinars. It's good to be well-rounded, but at the end of the day, you also want to know what your priorities and what your end results are going to be, so that you keep focus on what types of trainings are going to be relevant and important to you and your own personal goals. So definitely keep that in mind, because there's a lot of things available out there, but just think about yourself and say, okay, so what is it that I want to learn that is going to be relevant to my current need, but also my future goals in terms of pursuing a different position, moving to a different library, a different region, because there's a lot of things out there and you can explore them. But definitely at the end of the day, make sure you stay focused, because you can get overwhelmed by all the resources and opportunities available to you. So it's always going back to that early slides when we talked about evaluating your goals. Maybe you change your mind in 6 months and you wanted to do more like the consumer health path. Well, now that you're doing more systematic reviews, you want to go in that route, then it's okay. But again, keeping yourself focused on what exactly you want to do, but also what exactly makes you happy, because that's also a big thing of what we do in our profession, because you're going to spend a lot of time doing this. So pursue something that you enjoy, makes you happy. It's going to get you where you want to go.
Okay, so we're going back to an NLM because we're going to talk a little bit about grant opportunities. So I won't belabor the point because we already talked a little bit about looking in your areas. And there should be a link that takes you to the grants. These are some of the current ones that are available, and I pulled them out from all over the place. But you can see there's a lot of small grants that are available throughout the year, specific to students or to development or to outreach. And then there are some bigger grants that are available kind of once a year. So if you're interested in taking on one of these large projects, it is a serious undertaking, and Brenda and I are going to talk a little bit about ours. But if you want to get started, some of these smaller development grants are a great place to practice writing that grant and submit it and get some feedback. And the offices at NNLM will be the first ones to tell you, we can't tell you if we're going to fund this or not, but if you want us to look over things, if you want us to tell you what's good, what's bad, we're there to help you. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of other people who've written grants and done outreach if you're interested in it, and get that advice.
And I think right now we're going to take an opportunity to share with you some of the grants that we have applied for and have been able to work on projects with. So, it's not just grants for working on projects, but also travel grants. So like we mentioned earlier, if you want to go to one of the in-person conferences for the chapters or MLA as a whole, there's scholarships. So definitely seek out those opportunities in the websites and see when the deadlines are. So maybe right now you missed the opportunity for this year. Go on and see when the deadlines are so that you'll be prepared the following year to apply early on and get that application submitted so that you can have an opportunity to apply for those. And keep in mind, sometimes we tend to say, oh, you know what, there's probably several applicants. I should not apply this year. Trust me, as a former person reviewing grants and jury applications, a lot of times there's been years that nobody applies for it. So that year we don't grant that award. So you know what, you never know. That might be the year that nobody applies and it'll be you the one applying. So by default, and if you have a good application, you'll be the one selected. So never say never. So definitely applied. The worst that could happen is you don't get it this year, apply again. And so they definitely check out those Emily chapter scholarship awards to go to the conference, either in person or virtually. There's always something there for you. And here I just wanted to showcase some of the grants that I have applied for. Like I mentioned, when I was in Miami, I work closely with the medical students there as the head of outreach. And so we actually got an award to do health fairs and work with the medical students and some of the community organizations there, but also the public library. So sometimes you think about who can I partner with? And so we basically, the students had health fairs. They would tell someone, hey, you have high cholesterol. We want you to have more information about what better choices to make with your eating habits. And so they would go to our table and we would print out information. As you can see, we had laptops and flyers, and we would say, hey, you know what, here's some information. Here's Medline Plus. But then and this was like, what, oh gosh, like 15 years ago. So we would say, if you don't have any internet at home, you can go to your local library. And so we partnered with the public librarians, and they were promoting their the locations and the hours and the services they provided. So we were able to do that and help the community that way. So I really like doing that there. And then in my previous institution here at KU Med in Kansas, now I'm in Missouri, I was very fortunate to work in this project that we got. It was a big project for sure, because we got over $150,000. Again, these are big projects, but you can start with smaller ones, $1,000, and start and seeing and get your hands involved in those things. But for this one, I like to talk about that one because we actually got the grant, and this was when the regions were different. So I was part of the different region that we are now. But we created a radio, and that was basically, we wanted to reach out to the Spanish-speaking populations in Kansas, and I partnered with an organization within the university that was working with the community, and we wanted to record podcasts and videos to reach out to them. And we were fortunate that there was a lot of Spanish-speaking healthcare providers in our institution. So we were creating these podcasts in Spanish and interviewing healthcare providers talking in Spanish so that people could hear people from their own community talking about health issues. And this happened to be right before COVID hit. And so in spring, summer, and fall of 2020, we focus on not just general health issues, but focusing on things that were relevant to that community. As you probably know from being in the health sciences, misinformation, what was about vaccines, clinical trials. And we had people that were involved in those processes on the medical campus that spoke Spanish, and they were doing this information sessions in Spanish to people listening to those podcasts and watching those videos. And so it was really great to be part of this project that we were funded by NNLM, and reaching out to the community, and they're out there. So if you see the links, feel free to use them. I know that Mariana is still creating some of those as they're continuing with the project itself, but this is the type of stuff that we really was glad to be part of, because we were educating the community and having them learn about, about COVID, about vaccinations. One of the researchers that was part of a clinical trial was from Puerto Rico. And so he spoke to them in Spanish and explained them, hey, we need to seek out more Latinos into the clinical trial. So it was really great and rewarding to do that. As we mentioned, I got the NNLM Emerging Leader Award. So I've been fortunate that Kelly Gonzalez at UT Southwestern has been my mentor. And so I chat with her once a month and just keep her updated about what's going on with my job here. And I bounce ideas with her because she has all the experience from her being, in a leadership role for many years. And so I've learned so much with her about things that I can do here in my library to make things better. So that's something that you can keep in mind, that you can apply to. And so building those networks and those relationships has been great. So definitely keep that in mind, that there's awards for personal growth, but also for projects that you can collaborate with other people. And maybe your own institution could have awards and things that you can apply for.
And so I put a few of mine on too, and I think we have links to a few of these. But some of the smaller ones I had done were creating this web portal to support LGBTQ health care providers and patients. In Georgia, we had a free clinic, and I believe 2 days a week we had care specifically for the LGBTQ community. So this was a portal where they help both providers and patients could get more information specified to their health needs. So that was a smaller one, but it had a big impact in our community. One of the larger ones I did is this $25,000 one here, Consumer Health, where we created a LibGuide basically, but also went around the state of Arkansas. And this was great. This was about the second year I lived in Arkansas. So I got to learn all about the state of Arkansas while doing this. So there was a lot of bonuses to this. And we taught classes. So that's here, my co-PI, Alice, teaching one of the classes while I took an actual photo, which doesn't happen very often, as I mentioned. So so we had nurses, we had allied health professionals, we had a lot of different people. And as you can see, we were in some kind of like jungle room, I don't know, but they'd set it up for us. So we had a screen, and we had handouts to show them different resources, and we talked them through Medline and a lot of different things. And we got a really good reception for this. So we went all over the state teaching this course. We taught it with our own institution and within other local hospitals. So it was a really great project. The last one I've done before I got a little too busy with clinical was this Express Outreach Award. And we created this diabetes booklet you can see right here. And we've updated it for about 3 years now. And this is a newer one. And this was specifically an APRN called, and she's like, just out of the blue, to our reference number. And she's like, I'm working on this and I want to know, what kind of help can you provide? And I'm like, you know what? I think I know where I can get money for you for that. And so the majority of the funds for this have gone to printing this booklet and distribution. And again, we have distributed these in hospitals around the state so that providers can have a up-to-date look at the newest diabetes medications, because they've been changing so much. And one of the big things she wanted to put in this was information about which medications were covered by Arkansas Medicaid, because of course, a lot of our patients aren't going to be able to take it unless it's covered by their insurance. So if it's covered by Medicaid, it's going to be covered by everybody else. So that really helped them to know, hey, yes, I can put them on this, or no, this isn't covered, so it's probably going to be too expensive. Here's the next best thing. And to compare and contrast a lot. Now, one of the things that we were hoping to do that we never got around to, because my APRN took a new job, is doing a consumer version of this. So really kind of, she wanted to do like a menu, like a laminated menu to say, hey, here are the different types. Here's how they work. Here's kind of the cost breakdown to you, and here's some of the side effects. So people would be able to really easily say, hey, yeah, this looks good. It will control, the side effects don't bother me, that sort of thing. So these have been really good projects, and some of them have come around because of deliberate planning, that's something we really want to reach out and focus on, and we thought was needed. And some have come around just because somebody contacted me and I was like, you know what, I can help you with that. And I think as librarians, that is something we do really well. People call, whenever possible, I say, you know what, I can help you with that. Even if I can't help them immediately, I let them know that that's something that I think I can help them with, and I make sure to contact them back and let them know either way. But it's led to some really good outcomes for me. So we wanted to finish up by talking a little bit about things we wished we had known. And so since I'm already talking, I'm going to go first, and then I'll let Brenda jump in with the lines she has in here. But one was looking for mentors. And we talked about this a lot already, but look for mentors everywhere. Talk to your supervisor, talk to other librarians in your institution who have experience, talk to librarians at conferences, talk to librarians on committees you're in. You can go outside the library if you want, but just, mentors do not have to be that really formal relationship. If you want to do that, like Brenda said, MLA, the chapters provide a lot of more formal mentorships, and a lot of institutions do as well. But mentors, as far as I'm concerned, can be anyone with more experience in that area than you have, who you're willing to seek advice from. And I think all of us have different experience in different areas. So I can't give you all the information you need. I mean, that's why both Brenda and I are here. We have different perspectives on our careers. We have different careers. And so I can tell you one thing and she can tell you another. And it really depends on where you are, what's going to work best. I put in this attending conferences, and I said this already. When you can attend conferences, attend them. If you can't and you're going to do them virtual, but ask questions. When you see something that interests you, connect with that presenter, connect with who's doing that poster or paper, and get involved, because that's one of those ways you're going to start your network. Another one, and this is one my supervisors has said, it was talked a little bit about in the first ECLI, so I'm not going to belabor it, but when you start your library jobs, when you move up in your library jobs, don't be afraid to negotiate your salary. Some salaries are very set, but usually they're going to kind of give you the middle. They're going to offer you the middle of whatever range they have. And so you need to know if you feel like you should be getting more compared to whoever is out there, because you can look in public institutions to see what people are making. Make sure you ask for something that's comparable to what other people doing that job are getting. The worst they can say is no. It's not offensive to people if you say, well, I really want this much more. And they may come back and they may give it to you. They may give you half of that. But either way, you've made that effort, and that, you'll never feel bad about that. And also think to ask about moving expenses. Not all places will cover or pay for it, but sometimes there's something they can do for you. So don't be afraid that if you're going from one town to the next to say, hey, I'm going to need some help with this. And then I think the rest of these are for Brenda, so I'm going to let her talk about them.
Sure, I'll go over them quickly because I know we're going to have some time for you to ask questions, and I know that Brandon has other stuff that he needs to do with all of you. But thinking about the process, I know when we're new to a profession, one of the things that I wish I knew is early on in my career, not to be intimidated by the publishing process and how that whole thing works. So definitely, if there's workshops out there, take advantage of them, reach out to colleagues and ask them, how can I publish this? I have this project. How can I share it? And it starts with doing presentations and sharing them in a conference. And then maybe if you collect data, submit it to a journal, seek out that, do it early on, because people want to hear about your project. So don't be intimidated by the process and submit something early on. I think for the most part, I think definitely looking for mentors. The other thing that I have here is, apply for grants and travel awards. Somebody's asking about that too in the chat, because like I said earlier, you might be the only one applying for it. So go for it, and you might be the one getting it. So if you're the only applicant, so definitely keep that in mind and look for those grants and travel awards to go to conferences, because they'll help you a lot. And it's okay to make mistakes. We're human. Give yourself some grace. We're not perfect. Just making sure that if you make a mistake, learn from those mistakes and move on, and don't stay in the past. Move forward and say, well, you know what, I made this mistake. Now I'm going to do things better in the future, and I'm going to move forward with that. And you learn from it and then move on, and you'll have a story to tell when you do things and learn from that mistake. So definitely keep that in mind for that. So I think that's where we're going to end before we're going to have Brandon and any other people reading any questions that you might have for us to answer that. Thank you so much.
Yep, I think we just have the links with most of our should be in there, and then questions. And I will stop sharing here because I think Brandon actually has this information as well.
No, you can keep the questions slide up.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Thank you both so much for this. Those of you who have been tuning in, please put your questions in the chat. I did see that we have one already that Matt asked that Dee Dee responded to in the chat, but we may want to go ahead and see if y'all have other revenues that can be looked at. Do the chapters provide travel awards for their chapter meetings? I'm well aware that this year features a joint meeting of Southern and South Central chapters in New Orleans. Do you all have any experience with Southern or have more knowledge beyond just the South Central chapter?
I can tell you that being part of the MCMLA, the last 2-3 conferences have been virtually, and we do offer scholarships for people to attend. And then because it's actually a virtual conference, the cost is not as expensive. I think it's been either $30 to attend. So definitely the other thing too is you might be a member of this chapter, but maybe if like in this case, if you look at the Mid-Continental chapter and they have a virtual conference and going for that virtual conference is $30, maybe take advantage of that and go, because it's not as expensive as other ones that you have to pay for plane tickets, hotel, per diem and food. But I definitely know that for the ones that I've been part of, there's always some type of grant or award, travel award that they offer for either members or new members or students, because they want you to go and network with people and get involved. So definitely there's always something there.
Yeah, ditto for what Brenda said. I used to be in Southern chapter, and pretty much every chapter, as far as I can tell, offers some sort of it is a small travel award, and sometimes or free in or reduced cost to attend the meeting. So definitely something to check into and try to attend when you can.
So we have a question asking, can we get the useful links slides? So this may be a question for Laura or Brendan.
Brandon posted the link to those in the chat, so I think that one is taken care of.
And then the next question we have is, do you have any tools, apps, or methods for tracking timelines and keeping yourself on track for your goals?
I can go first because I'm kind of old-fashioned. I showed you the whiteboard behind me. I really do like to write things down, so I'm probably not the best person to ask about this. I have my little weekly planner that I've got the stuff written on, and you can't see it because it's gonna blur it out. And the green is where I've highlighted the things I've done. So every week I update this. I look at this every morning to see what I'm doing. But my big goals are written back here. My big projects are written back here with my timelines and things I want to do. So that's the old-fashioned way. Brenda might have some newer things that she could talk about.
I'm definitely old-fashioned, but I know colleagues that use tools, especially project management tools, where you can put charts with that data visualization that you have the different, you put like, January to February, and then you create this chart. Email me, you have my email. I can reach out and send you more of the specific software that my colleague uses to do that. Because some people, you like to see that visual timeline of where you are and then be able to change it depending on how your goals are changing. So definitely email me and I can look that up for you and give you more specific information on that.
Great. And then for those who may not have seen, Brendan had posted another link into the chat for the links to the slides for anyone wanting them. So then we have a comment just to both presenters. Thank you for so many resources, advice, and examples for your approaches and successes. Congratulations on all your hard work. It's very inspirational and motivating. And then we have another question asking, what is the best way to reach out to potential mentors? Do you have any advice on the best information to include when you contact them?
I have to be honest, I mostly do that kind of cold call sort of person. I usually reach out by email first. I don't know, that seems less intrusive. So somebody can feel free to, put it to the side if they don't have time. But if they do, they can respond to me and we can start a conversation that way. And or at conferences, if I meet people who are working on similar things or are in a position that I'm interested in, then when I'm talking to them, just to say, hey, can I call and talk to you about this some more? I think we use the term mentor a lot here, and I really want to emphasize that you don't have to ask somebody to be your mentor. You don't have to ask somebody to be in that really formal sounding relationship. You can just say, I would love to ask you some questions. And to me, that's the same thing, but it makes it a lot less stressful for everybody to feel like this is more of a casual thing, you know? And it can be about professional things alone, and it can branch out into more if you want it to. But don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes it intimidates people. I have people that I call them my mentors, but then I didn't actually say it, hey, we have a mentorship relationship. It was more like, you know, I met them at MLA. We built up a relationship. I knew their, you know, their library directors, or they've been associate deans. And so because I was applying for jobs like right now, I reached out to them and I said, hey, can I chat with you on some advice? I applied for this job and wanted to have your take on how to prepare myself for that. And they were like, sure, let's chat. Let's, you know, let's talk about it. And so I think, like you said, you have the formal ones through some chapters, or like MLA, if you take advantage of MLA Connect, or sometimes where you're renewing or becoming a member of a chapter, sometimes it asks you, you know, would you like to have a mentor? So you learn about the chapter itself, and you know, and they get to meet other people. So that kind of informal relationships, I think it's more like reach out and build relationships with people that are doing what you like to do, or people that are in positions that you want to do in the future, because then you can just have, you know, coffee with them and say, hey, can I meet with you if in the conference in person, or email them and say, hey, you know what, I know that you're at this institution and you're doing this work, and I just chat with you about how you got there, and people will be happy to talk to you. So stuff like that, in more in a casual way, because you're not saying I want you to be my mentor, because that is like, wait a minute, what type of commitment does this have to be? It's more like, hey, do you have some time to reach out and ask you some questions? And then after you finish that conversation, you'll be like, hey, maybe, you know, a couple of months later, can I catch up again with you and share that? And you're just building that relationship with those people, so that way you have that. It's more like it's your colleague, it's your friend, but then it's someone that you call your mentor because they provided advice based on their experiences and the questions you had for them. So hopefully that helps, that it doesn't have to be this formal thing. It's more like you have someone that you can bounce ideas with and reach out for advice.
We have just more comments saying, great job, Lindsay and Brenda. Thank you so much.
And I see something, I just saw something about being overwhelmed. And, you know, we can tell you that there's times that we feel like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I think for you is, I always tell my staff, and this is advice that I you know, need to take myself, is take care of yourself first. The job is going to be there, but your health, you know, it's important. So if you're healthy and you take care of your mental health, all of that, then you'll be able to do the work. The work is going to be there. Deadlines are going to be there, and hopefully you have a supportive supervisor or someone that you can say, you know what, this happened. Can I change my deadline? And I think for me, that's the kind of conversation that you hope to have with your supervisor, and say, hey, and when I meet with my staff, that's what I say. If there's anything that's going to get in the way of meeting a deadline or your job, let me know right away, because we can try to work on the timeline, or maybe somebody else can help you with a project. You're not alone. We're a team. You know, I'm here to provide support, the resources you need. We're a team. So tell me early on if you feel overwhelmed, so that we can work on something so you don't feel that you have to do this alone. So definitely, hopefully in a good work environment, that you can reach out and ask for help. Because if you're in a place that you can't ask for help, to think about, is this the place that I want to be? Because we're a team. I feel like, you know, you have that support, and be in a team-oriented space that we work together, and we're here to support you in any way we can, especially your supervisor or your colleagues, but also take care of your health, because that's important.
Thank you so much, both of you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we do have to stick to our timeline here today. That way we can get NNLM's information in here at the end.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.